This month marks another watershed moment in the March for LGBTQ plus rights. As we've been discussing, the Supreme Court's ruling banning discrimination in the workplace is another step toward equality. For more on the historic nature of that decision, I'm joined by Brad Sears, who is Associate Dean of Public Interest Law at UCLA Law School and one of the foremost experts on the subject. He's also affiliated, he's like a distinguished fellow, former executive director of the Williams Institute, one of my favorite institutions in America, which I'll get into in a moment. Joining him is Ryan Bos, who's executive director of Capital Pride Alliance, one of my other favorite groups in America. Each year, Capital Pride produces Trans Pride and the Pride celebration in the nation's capital, one of the largest Pride events in the country. Welcome, Brad and Ryan. Good to have you both here. And I understand it's nice. I don't know if you can all see you, but I can see each other. Brad, let me just start with you for a moment. The Williams Institute, that people may not know a lot about, is an incredible reservoir of knowledge, in my view, because it is driven by data. It is a data place that looks in it. So I just want to ask you, what is your years of now accumulating data about the LGBTQ community, where it sits and fits. Often the question is, with a lot of data, did you learn anything we didn't know before? So what have we learned from the pile of data you have helped amass?
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here. And we've learned a lot. The Williams Institute was really founded in 2000 because at that time, our opponents had put out a lot of myths about LGBT people. We were all rich, white, urban, and didn't have kids. And we were actually founded to fight back against those assertions with facts proven up by rigorous research. And what have we learned? We are diverse as a community. Actually, Black Americans are the group that are most likely to identify as LGBT. We not only live in urban areas, we live in all parts of the country. Our numbers are biggest right now, actually, in the South. We are not all wealthy. As a matter of fact, poverty rates are higher in our community, particularly for women, elderly people, and those raising families. And this probably was the longest myth to fight back against, but we do have kids, as we know. And then that assertion changed to, even if we do have kids, they don't turn out all right. And we actually know they turn out just a little bit better. And I think marriage equality was the kind of culmination of putting those lies and myths to the ground.
Thank you for that. Before I move to Ryan for a second, we did have the Supreme Court decision, and you're in California right now, so thanks for joining from there. So let's talk in terms of Richter scale and earthquakes. How big is the Supreme Court decision on the Richter scale? Is it a big deal, or is there a bigger shock out there we still need?
It's a huge deal, but we're not done yet. And I think, just to put it in perspective, when we started the Williams Institute in 2000, still constitutionalized to criminalize same-sex behavior through sodomy laws. Most states didn't have parenting rights. We didn't have marriage equality. We had the Defense of Marriage Act, and we had Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This was one of the final pieces in kind of ending the lack of protections and the discrimination at the federal level. It extends employment protections to over 4 million LGBT Americans who didn't have them. But if you read the dissents of those opinions, you'll see we still have work to do. We need the Equality Act to provide protections in all areas of life that LGBT people participate in. And we're going to have fights about religious freedom, and we're going to have fights still about transgender equality.
Pride moments in America, Pride Festival, which, we've seen here, but you've got so many different groups that you've been assembling and bringing in. But you made a very provocative statement the other day, which I want to start with because I thought it was so meaningful. You said gays and lesbians have complicity in part of the LGBT community not getting the respect, attention, and place in this equation that it deserves. I'd love to give you an opportunity to share more.
I missed the first part of that. I assume that was directed to me.
I gave you a lot of credit for Pride in Washington, so that's all the good stuff. What I wanted to ask you is, you made a provocative statement the other day, recently, saying lesbians and gays have not been good to the transgender community, which was key to so much, when Stonewall, so much of the initiation of this rights movement, that we have not made the securing of rights one that has been shared across that equation, which we're talking about today. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to share more.
Yeah, I would say that as a community and as major events such as Pride celebrations, we have not done the best that we could do to ensure that everyone is lifted up, their voices are heard. And an example, I guess, for me is when marriage equality was won. And then Don't Ask, Don't Tell. A lot of folks were coming to us saying, hey, there's no need for these pride celebrations anymore. We've finished our work. And we're like, no, there is so much more work to do and so many aspects of our community that we need to continue to fight for. And we all need to be seen and we all need to be heard. And in addition to that, I think it's very sentiment to what's going on today with the movement around Black Lives Matter. This is our movement as well, and we need to be there out of respect and engaged in creating change.
Where do you think, I mean, you've been doing this now for a while, and there, from whence I mainly know you through the sports groups, the various different leagues. I've been a member, not as active as I should be. Sorry, folks, of Front Runners, for instance. I'll just admit it. I'll be there Saturday. But when you kind of look at these different groups there, and I know the members come from every walk, every political stripe, not everyone is out. And it's sort of this, petri dish, if you will, of just some are out, some are not out. What is the state of health, if you will, of the LGBTQ community in being out, being bold, being engaged, or is it just in the safe places that are within the pride networks? Is that a fair question?
Oh, it's a very good question, and I think everyone would probably have a different answer to that somewhat. I would say that pride is still very relevant in the sense of every year there are those who show up who are coming out for the first time. And so we've even received comments this year just of not having that space. But then there are other aspects of our community, depending upon where they're at, that some folks are going back in the closet, such as our seniors and senior living. That's why within a budget, one of our budget requests for the city this cycle with our LGBTQ plus coalition was around senior housing, because we need to create safe spaces for folks, because some of the systems out there currently just aren't adequate to providing those safe spaces.
To kind of grab the issue about seniors, Brad, and again, coming back to all of the things that you've got purview in the UC, what are the, how do I put this? What are the trends that worry you most right now about various parts, particularly vulnerable communities in the LGBTQ space? And because those include the elderly community, it also includes, certain communities of color, maybe a socioeconomic status. But what are the trends that worry you?
Yeah, and I'll just start with COVID-19 because I think for a big segment of our recent LGBT history, we looked at shading different states on a map, different colors with positive changes in LGBT rights laws. And some of the issues that we need to face moving forward will be more complicated than changing the color of a state on a map. I think perhaps a crisis is the best time to measure how far we still have to go. And what we know about COVID-19 is that it has a disproportionate impact on LGBT people. In terms of physical health, we're more likely to have the underlying conditions that make us vulnerable. In terms of mental health, which is impacting a lot of us right now when dealing with staying at home for long periods, we know more of us are likely to live alone, and we have higher rates of depression. And in terms of our economic kind of survival, we know that LGBT people are more likely to be poor, and that they are more likely to be represented in the sectors such as entertainment, food service, that have been hardest hit by this pandemic. The problem is there's still discrimination in the collection of data. So the very powerful data we have about how COVID-19 is impacting Black communities, we do not yet have about LGBTQ communities. And what we've seen as part of a reaction to this epidemic is trying to collect that data. But I think we should be concerned, and that all of our organizations that provide direct services to vulnerable people really need to be helped in this moment.
Ryan, let me jump over to you and I'll talk to you about Pride festivities, because you're good at that as well. And I guess the first Pride parade I ever saw was in West Hollywood in the 80s, and it was something. And of course, the ones in Washington. But we don't know how long we're going to have this COVID virus. And, festivals and big public moments, unless you're in Tulsa or Arizona, maybe are complicated. And I'm just interested in how you envision the way in which a community can celebrate, or the community can express itself and show its strength and size and diversity in a world where we're all online mostly.
I think that's something we definitely are all grappling with. Actually, on this past Saturday, our international community came together, and the first global Pride took place, where Pride organizers across the entire world submitted videos to just showcase their communities. And I think we're going to be seeing more of that, but acknowledging, obviously, Zoom or virtual fatigue. But it's critical, obviously, whether it be Pride events or whether it be galas or other events from many of our LGBTQ organizations, is we see these opportunities as ways to be visible and to be seen and be heard. So we need to be creative in finding new mediums to ensure that we have that voice, and obviously safe ones in light of COVID. So for us personally, we are definitely trying to think outside the box in regards to what would some of these activities be that can be engaging, not just on the computer screen, but also be able to be sending a message and allowing our community members to be seen and to be heard.
Let me ask you just finally, both, before we move on to our next session. We're all storytellers. I'm a storyteller. Ryan, you run a big organization. You've got to tell stories, and of course, you tell stories. Brad and I, I'm just a big fan of Williams Institute and what it's done over the years. The best stories have villains and they have heroes. So I'm going to ask each of you to pick a villain and pick a hero as part of the LGBTQ+ story today. Brad?
Well, I'll go with the easy one, and the importance of this election. We have a president who has put all of us at risk by not responding appropriately to this virus, and who has led a consistent assault on LGBTQ rights from the very first day he took office, removed LGBT issues from the White House webpage, to this week, where he continues to fight against LGBT rights and to expand religious exemptions to our protections. So we have a villain in so many ways that we need to take care of. I guess for the hero, I just think our community is heroic, and I think the whole country is grappling with coming together across differences. And we have a way to do that that's available, but that's not automatic. There was diversity at the Stonewall Inn. When I grew up, I was in Kansas City, New Haven. There was one bar in town, there was one community center, and everyone came together. And that LGBTQ identity brought us together when we might have remained segregated, and gave us a commonality to start talking and getting to know each other. And I think even though it's hard with the social distancing, that kind of coming together across differences is something we have in our history, and it's something we can continue to do.
Ryan, I'm going to give the last word to you. Your villain and your hero.
Well, I would say we are our worst villain and our best hero. I think in what's going on, Afonso made reference to this is an opportunity for us to check ourselves, check the communities that we surround ourselves in, and we can be our worst enemy in regards to not putting ourselves in spaces to be part of the movement forward. So I think for us to be heroes, it's us actually putting ourselves out there, being willing to ask questions, being willing to be uncomfortable. And those of us who are able and willing and are committed to doing that are the true heroes.
Well, thank you. I want to thank both of you for joining us. Ryan Bos, Executive Director of the Capital Pride Alliance, and Brad Sears of the UCLA School of Law and the Williams Institute. Really appreciate your time and insights, and hope we can do this again. So thank you both for joining. Happy Pride.
Thank you.